Don't be like me, I just finished a massive playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3, Tactician difficulty. I tried to do most of, if not all the content that I could, and now they announced that there's a brand new patch coming out. Poor me, if I had have waited, this patch probably would have been out and would have fixed a couple of things that would have made my playthrough slightly better. But in seriousness, it's nice to see that Larian is still fixing the game. They've got a pretty meaty patch coming, patch 6, which brings more than just romance, with multiple gameplay improvements and fixes to address player-reported issues. And it's nice to see that they're still making improvements to the game. It would have been very easy. I'm sure many game companies do it. When their game sells well, it's going gangbusters, word of mouth is really positive. It's hard to find people criticizing it. Those sorts of voices are silenced in this case. It's nice to see that they're not taking it all for granted. They're trying to make the game as best it can be, even 7 or 8 months after release. And to give a bit of a hot take, after spending such a long time with Baldur's Gate 3, I think it's a fantastic game, certainly one of the best last year, probably one of the best CRPGs of all time. But now that the dust has settled, I think it's fair to say, yeah, there were probably some things in the game that should still be addressed, improvements to make. Act 3, even Act 2 to an extent, not perfect, whereas Act 1 is absolutely phenomenal, probably one of the best sort of 30 hours or so of gaming I've ever had in terms of a role-playing game. And so I want to talk about this patch and what's going to be coming very soon, but I also want to talk about some of the commercials. There's been an update on the amount of revenue that Baldur's Gate 3 has generated. What does that mean? What can we expect from the Baldur's Gate franchise going forward? And also, what are Larian's plans specifically? So if we look at the patch, it mentions, while a little exercise is good for the body, running back and forth between party members to dismiss them can be tiring. So you'll now be able to dismiss a recruited companion from your party while speaking to the companion you want to replace them with. Thank God. The amount of times I wanted to do a character's quest, someone who wasn't normally in my party, I usually stuck to sort of my core 3 companions plus myself. I didn't really mix and match. I'm sure plenty of people do. It's probably fun. I'm just stuck in my ways. But what you'd have to do is, I just want to get, say, Astarian into my party. I would have to go to one of my existing party members, I'd have to dismiss them, then I'd have to go over to Astarian and invite them to the party. Big frustration, first world problem, I know, but it was a little bit tedious if you had to keep doing that, especially in later acts when you're trying to sort of tie up companion quest lines. This will make it easier to mix and match as well, because sometimes you just cannot be bothered with all these conversations when you just want to bring someone along. This will make it much easier, I imagine. It's sounding like you'll just get into dialogue with the companion you want to recruit, and there'll probably be an option there, who do you want to dismiss out of your current party? So it's a nice little change, quality of life improvement. They mention that Shield Bash has returned home. Shield Bash and Rebuke of the Mighty, they have been fixed, which means your passives should now correctly trigger saving throws. Now, I don't know a lot about this. I haven't sort of dived into all of the different spells and are they working correctly, but I just remember Shield Bash, it just did not seem to be working. And it was particularly annoying because anytime an enemy moved near my character, for me it was Shadowheart, I'd get the prompt to use Shield Bash, but I'm not sure if it was actually working. Maybe I have that slightly wrong, but that is what it seemed like. It sounds like they're fixing this. Another positive, the abilities should be working in the game. That should be a bare minimum, so good to see that it's addressed. They then mention that we're also here to help you practice some self-love this month by making sure you're the star of the show. With patch 6, automatically triggered dialogue will now try to prioritize your avatar as the main speaker, so your party members should stop stealing the limelight. This kind of refers to you're in some grand battle, it takes you 30 minutes to get through the encounter, and then there's an NPC interaction straight afterwards, but oh no, you were maybe using Gale just before this, which means that Gale is now front and center of the conversation, and your NPC, your player character, is wandering in the background, even though they're meant to be the main character. It's all about them. It doesn't happen, and it's not really a situation where you can just go, I'll just reload and and play it out again, because sometimes you've gone through that whole massive encounter without saving, which means you'd have to go all through that again just to have your character standing there during dialogue, even though a lot of it will be the same. This situation is made even worse if your player character has all the points in, say, persuasion, maybe dialogue-related skills, and then you can't use your character in the conversation, which means all the dice rolls are muddled up. It's not a good time. So it's a positive thing. I'm not sure if they'll give you a choice or it will just automatically put your character into it. It mentions prioritizing, so it doesn't sound like you'll be able to just click a button and choose. Maybe this will just be how it works, but I think it's a good thing. Universally, it's much better that the character you create is the one who will just automatically go into the next conversation when it's automatically triggered. Pretty cool. There was a little bit of controversy. Just referring to this, so the patch itself, it's releasing on PC, everything else, PlayStation, Xbox. Why are they bothering with Xbox? That console's going to be dead in a couple of days. They're going to confirm it. Just kidding. Patch 6 is 21 gigabytes and requires approximately 150 gigabytes of free space for PC and Steam Deck. Short on space, uninstall Baldur's Gate 3 and re-download the patched version. I did see some complaints about this, which are probably fair. I guess for me, I've just given in. I just assume that any modern AAA game is going to be 100 plus gig, and I see it sort of updating all the time on Steam, and I fortunately have the space. I've got the internet, so it's not really a big deal, but I get it if for some people this just is a big hassle, that you've got to have 150 gigabytes of storage, and you basically got to re-download the entire game. It's annoying. It is sadly an industry standard these days. I don't think it's fair to give Larian just a complete pass and then complain about it elsewhere. You should be consistent with that. If you've always found it annoying, let them know. Maybe they can work something else out in the future. But I imagine that a lot of people complaining about this probably doesn't actually affect them anyway. And when they've criticized, say, Ubisoft or EA, I can't remember when this has happened before, it's probably just because those companies suck and let's find a reason for complaint about them. I can't blame you for that. Fuck those companies. Larian are doing a decent job, so all is okay in the world. So that's kind of it for the patch. But I just also wanted to mention this, more of a subtle story that's gone around. Hasbro, who are basically the owners of Dungeons & Dragons as far as I know, they earned about 90 million from Baldur's Gate 3 so far. Now, that number's probably not humongous in the grand scheme of games. I mean, if we remember, Spider-Man 2, I think it cost nearly $300 million to develop, and I'm pretty sure Baldur's Gate 3 has sold about as many copies. So the 90 million number by itself doesn't seem like heaps. But remember this, Hasbro are purely the licensees for Baldur's Gate, Dungeons & Dragons. They did not publish the game. Maybe they had a handful of employees consult with Larian and sort of making sure they were staying true to what they needed to in terms of the D&D universe, but they were not developing the game, they were not publishing, they basically had no horse in the race. All they did was allow a great studio like Larian with a proven track record in the RPG space to make this game, Baldur's Gate 3. So the reality is, they basically picked up $90 million for doing pretty much nothing. They signed a piece of paper, here's the keys, Larian, make us a game, and that was literally it. And they must be licking their lips because they've actually been losing money in a lot of other areas. There was a lot of disaster going on in the D&D space. I think some point last year, where they were essentially trying to restructure the license agreement. So if you were doing anything Dungeons & Dragons related, I think even if you were making just YouTube videos about Dungeons & Dragons, there was something about you would now owe Hasbro way more money than you did before. And pretty much everyone thought it was totally scummy. Perhaps look into it if you thought D&D was in good hands, because it absolutely isn't. This company is disgusting. They've done a lot else in their other business interests, like Magic the Gathering. If you're interested in those sorts of card games, then Hasbro have got their scummy paws in that as well, releasing just a lot of dodgy products that are just designed to fleece people. They're pretty much the EA of the physical gaming space. They're just not a good company, and it does make me think about, where does Baldur's Gate go from here? Where does Larian go from here? Because the truth is, Larian do not need Hasbro. I don't think they need Baldur's Gate. I've seen it do the rounds a lot, this idea that, oh, Baldur's Gate 3 was only a huge success because it had the Dungeons & Dragons name. That's what did it. I don't believe it for a second. There are a ton of Dungeons & Dragons video games that you probably haven't heard of because they were total flops. There was quite a period where I don't think Hasbro really had confidence in Dungeons & Dragons video games because nothing they really tried worked too well. Now, I don't think they invested heavily. We're not talking about sort of heaps of AAA games and they all flopped. A lot of them were sort of smaller titles, probably some phone games, who knows. But I remember a couple here or there, they didn't do well and they took this punt on Larian and it totally paid off. But again, I really feel that Larian achieved success because they were in the right place at the right time. People were totally sick of these scummy live service games. Even the single-player titles, they had to be crammed with battle passes, microtransactions. We've had the age of loot boxes and all of that. So just getting a game that was a really great length, 100+ hours, you could make so many decisions, it's well crafted, it's not just a mediocre middling game, it's actually excelling at everything it claims to do. That just drew everyone in and word of mouth just went crazy. I really do think it was just gaming fans communicating that made this game blow up. It was nothing to do with really Divinity Original Sin 2, prior work from Larian. It was not the Dungeons & Dragons name. It was just that people got into it and it was a fantastic game. And people told their friends, told their family members. They let everyone know about it. They screamed to the heavens. That's what did this. Now, did the Baldur's Gate name help? Did Dungeons & Dragons help? I'm sure it did. It probably helped some casual fans get into it. Maybe people who don't necessarily play heaps of video games, but they're somewhat familiar with D&D, maybe some of those systems they could have played when they were younger, things like that. It certainly helped for accessibility reasons, I believe, but I don't think it was the reason that it blew up. There was some smart marketing. All the bear sex stuff, I don't think some people understand why that was so good. I don't think it was bear sex itself. People didn't go, oh, I want to fuck a bear, let's play this game, incredible. It was more, if you can do that, imagine how many choices there have to be. You must be able to do absolutely anything if you can commit this bestiality. I really think that was what motivated people. At least I hope so. I know there's a lot of weird people out there. But it was definitely the marketing, and just on that word of mouth, what tends to happen is when something really huge happens with a game and it blows up online, let's say Cyberpunk being a mess at release, or Baldur's Gate 3 just being excellent at release for the most part, that filters down to the normies, to the casual gamers, and they get into it as well. It's not as if they're going on forums, they're on Reddit, they're on the RPG forums, sort of looking it up. Absolutely not. But they just hear about it, word sort of travels around, maybe on various social media platforms, and that is what really just propels a game like Baldur's Gate 3 to sell upwards of 25 million copies, it sounds like. Huge numbers. It's been such a lift for the CRPG genre. Now again, I don't think that Larian need Hasbro. I don't think that they need Baldur's Gate. Some people might be sad if it happens. They might be sad to hear it. But I honestly think it'll be better if Larian just get back to using their own IP. They make either a Divinity Original Sin 3 or they make something else in their own universe. I don't think they need to be throwing away $90 million to Hasbro, who don't deserve it. They are absolutely pathetic. Maybe the D&D name helped Baldur's Gate 3 a little bit, but I don't think it helped to the degree of $90 million. They must be laughing to the bank. They know they did nothing, and they've basically gotten free money. Happy for them, but I'd like to see them fall and just suffer in terms of business after this. I don't like to see them having success, but props to Larian. I hope from here they can just keep propelling this further. Hopefully they keep making the patches, they make Baldur's Gate the best it can be, but I'm really excited for when they move on to the next game. And the best thing is, they're very likely going to continue with their early access strategy, where they release maybe the first act of the game, they make it available if you want to pre-order. That's the most ethical way of doing these pre-orders. You don't get false promises, some stupid skin that you don't really care about. You actually get access to the game and you can actually start providing feedback. I've said it before that even paying full price for Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3 when it came out in early access 3-4 years ago, that to me, I got my money's worth. I almost felt like I was robbing Larian when back in the middle of last year, the official release came and I could just play through 100 hours of content for what to me felt like nothing because I spent my money 3 years earlier on early access. I felt like I wasn't being generous, that they could have actually charged me more. But they didn't. They felt that was fair and they're reaping the rewards from that. They've obviously made so much money, they're going to put it into their next game, and I'm looking forward to it. Keep improving your next project. People are going to be absolutely hyped. It deserves the hype. This is when you can justify people just absolutely getting excited before we've seen everything. When someone actually has a great track record. Will it be a sci-fi game? Will it be Divinity Original Sin 3? Will it be something else? We'll have to see. But I don't think it needs to be Baldur's Gate 4. They can move on if they want, but if it is Baldur's Gate 4, that's okay too. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.